need to be recorded even, but... Okay, so, I mean, it's up to you. If you want, you can just turn on one of those mics or use this one. If you don't want to, then I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. It's quite a small group. We probably don't need a...
Okay, sorry about that.
Sure, no worries.
Could you make the GitHub live?
Yes.
I know it's controversial.
No, it's definitely true.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Let me find that home.
Well,
I genuinely don't know.
Could you make it a bit bigger?
Yeah, definitely. Settings?
Settings, and then there's a thing at the top left with appearance.
Yeah.
Appearance.
Okay. Flashbang.
Theme mode, sync with system, change that to.
Yeah.
Things that are brain on. Is goed.
Oh.
You didn't save.
Yeah, it did. Okay, just have to refresh every page now.
You can just refresh.
Okay, so yeah, Quantity Dev is this organization. It started out, I was thinking about, so the origin is actually with MArray, which is what my poster was on. It's kind of the first of these wrapping array API libraries, where the idea is you give it an array API compatible namespace, and it gives you back another array API compatible namespace, but with some extra things. So it should still work with something that consumes this standard API, but automatically do cool things on top. So if I have like a masked array and I'm sorting it, then all the masked elements will automatically go to the end. I thought, well, could we do a similar thing with units where we're like attaching units on, and then automatically if we're like taking the square of the array, then it will perform that operation not just on the data, but also on the units. But otherwise, it would kind of act as the array underneath. So originally, I did this with Pint, just basically copying what MArray has done in the structure, but then making it specific to units. And this kind of worked. We got some examples in SciPy, not all of SciPy, but some parts of SciPy where this worked nicely. And yeah, it would basically just, you define like, I don't know, where's mul? Binary names. So yeah, this is the Pint syntax, is like you're getting the magnitude on the one hand, and this is like the data, but then you're performing this as conversion. So if you're multiplying two things with different units, then it will automatically adjust the value that you get out of the multiplication to match that. So this was the idea, and I kind of shared this about a bit. And the main people who are actually interested were some of the astropy.units maintainers who thought, well, this is cool, but it only works with Pint. Could we get it to work with astropy.units? But there's a similar problem with the unit libraries. Just like the array libraries, they all kind of have their own way of doing things. And it's actually a lot worse in some, well, on the one hand, the APIs are a lot smaller. They're doing a lot less things than the arrays, so it's a smaller problem. But they all have like very unique ways of doing things. Unit conversion in Pint looks a lot different to how it works in astropy.units. But yeah, we were thinking, the astropy maintainers were thinking they want like a astropy units 2.0, where they can get rid of all the bad things that they don't like anymore, and also take the opportunity now that we have this to kind of agree on a standard API that other libraries could do as well. And then this would mean that for quantity array, we don't just have like a unit library building on top of whichever array library you want, but you could also have whichever unit library you choose building on top of whichever array library. So yeah, it would be quite nice to really get that working. And yeah, the main thing to discuss today is just this repo that we have here, which is what we've merged so far is just a draft of what do all of these unit libraries agree is like the minimal thing, the one like obvious way to do things that should be required of all of these libraries. In terms of status, we don't really have any actual implementations of this spec being worked on right now, but it definitely could be. Some of the people working on this, especially on the AstroPi side, are quite static typing inclined. So we already have a lot of typing going on. We're using OP type. We have these like runtime checkable decorators. And yeah, maybe that's another reason why there isn't any implementation of it yet, because it's trying to be quite strict and statically telling you exactly what's going on here. But yeah, we can basically just, for this session, take a look at what's merged so far, see if anybody has any questions about that, and then also take a look at the open discussions and see if anybody has any input. But does anybody have anything they want to say for now? No? Okay, well, we can look at the code. Yeah, so the idea is similar to the array API and array namespace. We also have a metrology namespace. It's made up of a quantity type, also a value type, a unit type, and a dimension type. And then a dimension is kind of at the root, it's its own thing. It can, in theory, work with lots of different types of units or quantities. And then a unit is parameterized by a dimension, so units have a specific dimension type that they work with. Quantities then are combining a certain value type with a certain unit type, and then the dimension type that works with that unit. And yeah, that's it. So the metrology namespace right now is quite simple. Like the array API has asArray, we just have 3 functions for constructing these different types. So as dimension, as unit, and as quantity. One thing that we'll get to discussing is for as quantity, what should we be accepting here? It seems right now to make sense to both be able to take a quantity and maybe then perform some conversion if you pass it a different unit. Maybe we don't support that and we only allow passing the same unit you already have, and that can be a no-op. We definitely want to support that, like as array x should just give you back x if x is already an array. So we do want that. But also, should we be accepting a value here? Yeah, this is kind of the only way that you have to build a quantity, is you give it, this is the value, this is the unit, and give me back this like combination of value and unit. So one question is maybe, is it right that we have both of these things built into this one method, or should it be split up into 2 different functions? I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, as unit, as dimension are a bit more simple. Another question, do we definitely need to be taking strings here? It doesn't seem like a harsh requirement, so I think it's fine. But in theory, you could have a whole kind of metrology thing that doesn't work with strings at all. It's all just things you import. It wouldn't be very user-friendly, but again, if we're going for something absolutely minimal, maybe we shouldn't be requiring this. Yeah, dimension itself. So we're quite low on like documentation. We have no narrative content yet. It's all just been in the GitHub issue discussions. But yeah, things are kind of being discussed and noted down, and we would like to get to a point where it looks somewhat similar to the array API. There's definitely a lot less of the like intense design decisions that need to be made. But yeah, it would still be nice to kind of note down why we're doing things in the way we are. For dimension, what we have defined right now is just some operations that you can do on dimensions that make sense. So you should be able to do length squared and these kinds of things. Units, again, is going to have those operations and then just have a property of the dimension. Again, that's all we have so far. And quantity has a bit more. So, sorry, also there's this, similar to arrays, have the array namespace under. We have this metrology namespace under, which returns you the namespace that we have at the top. A quantity is just made up of a value and a unit. And then we have a few more methods we can do on quantity, checking for equality and comparison. Again, the static typing here looks quite confusing. I don't really understand all of it in detail. But yeah, I think OP type can do some cool stuff here. But yeah, that's about what we have right now. So does anybody have any thoughts on this? No? Okay, well, we can look at the main discussions. So in terms of what might be missing, the first thought was we're still maybe missing like a nice way to do unit conversion. Like I was saying, this as quantity, if you have a quantity and you want to convert it to a different unit, we sort of might support it in here. It still needs a doc string to tell us what is the behavior. Should this error if you give it a different unit, or should we perform conversion here? If we decide not to support conversion in here, then we would need to add something else. But I think the discussion is pretty much converged on this makes sense as the one like required way that you have to support conversion. And then if you want to support things that are a bit more user-friendly, like a convert function, or maybe a method on the quantity objects themselves, then you could do that, but that would be additional to what's in the spec, at least for a first version. So maybe we have that already. One thing that we don't have is if you just have a unit, another unit, and a value, and you want to kind of get a new value that converts from that one of those units to the other one. So if we go into one of these discussions, you can see this. So yeah, we have no quantities in play here. We just have a value and 2 units. And there are a couple of ideas here of, do we want a like convert function in the metrology namespace that does this? Do we want it to be like a method on the unit objects? Or we could have like a function in the namespace that gives you a converter between units. So rather than passing in values to anything in the namespace directly, you're like gaining this converter, and then after that you can pass values into it. That might be something we want to do, and I thought that kind of looked good. But then, yeah, one of the Pint maintainers was pointing out actually some of this stuff with using as quantity for conversion is like not very readable. It's like not very obvious that there's conversion going on here. And yeah, it was like, okay, this is what the converter would look like if you don't like save your converter, if you just apply it directly. And again, maybe the user experience is not great there. It's not clear exactly what this is doing. But yeah, the discussion hasn't progressed much past here. So yeah, I would be interested in opinions on what people think about this like conversion functions. Any thoughts?
I prefer the first. I prefer the first one.
So you prefer like
No,
No?
this one, like
Go
as
down.
a method, not as
a method on the unit object? So you would have like
So
you'd have like a method here of like convert.
yeah, but the one that you say, the unit dots, methodology dots convert value from this unit to that unit.
So you think add in the top level namespace here, like a convert function that takes in a unit and a value and another unit and gives you out a value? Yeah?
I feel like as a user, I would expect to put in a quantity and rather than a unit and a value.
Yeah, so like we have that already. If we say that this makes sense, there's one way to do it. It's also, it's kind of confusing because the end user experience is probably not going to be using these as unit, as quantity things, because that's not what already exists in the libraries. But these seem to make sense as like, okay, if we're kind of following the array API and having this like minimal thing that makes sense across all the different frameworks, this kind of makes sense.
How does this as quantity discussion play with like unitless quantities? Like, is there any distinction between a value and a
So dimensionless.
Dimensionless.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you had a dimensionless quantity here and you pass in a unit that isn't dimensionless, then I guess the expected behavior would be it just takes on that new unit.
Because I think there's a distinction between a value and a dimensionless quantity.
Yeah.
I don't think I wouldn't want to. I mean, it also depends. Yeah, what you think a dimensionless quantity is, because I think I wouldn't expect it to be converted to.
Yeah. So
I would expect it to fail. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's a distinction between bare values and then values with dimensionless units.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe only certain conversions between units, whether they're dimensionless or not, allowed, and the rest would error. Yeah, that makes sense. There has been discussion in some places of dimensionless things. Yeah. But yeah, if we look into quantity array, there is some like handling for when things are dimensionless, I think. Unless this ended up being removed. Yeah, so like set item, for example, it's like, okay, if we have units and the thing we're trying to set has units, then we attempt some unit conversion. If we're dimensionless, then it's just like taking on the magnitude of what we're setting. And then otherwise we're like raising an error. Yeah. I haven't thought about this at all recently, so it's kind of only just coming back to me. But yeah, I think there's a few other places where we do something similar. Okay, so yeah, like in the power function, you can't raise something to a dimensioned power. You can only raise something to a dimensionless power. I guess we could say that.
In this case, then it's a value and a dimensionless quantity are treated the same, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we use x2.units anywhere else.
I'm also not sure, like, I'm trying to think now of use cases where you actually want to work with dimensionless stuff that isn't just covered by just working with a value, but I feel like I've encountered this before.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it also simpler if you just say if it has a unit, even if that unit is dimensionless, then it has to match. And you have to define a conversion function properly. And there is no conversion function.
I suppose so, yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to just now, especially.
But on the other hand, like if you divide quantity by another quantity with the same unit, what you get is a dimensionless. But it is a value. Like you should be able to raise something to that power.
But you should not be able to convert it to meters easily. Maybe that makes sense.
Yes. Because at that point, it is just
wrong.
Yeah.
To do, and then you should be able to get the value easily if you need to do it for some reason. But
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I don't think we're really going to make any like groundbreaking progress right here, but it's mainly an invitation to, if anybody is interested in like reading through these open issues and weighing in and like helping us get some closed, that would be good. But I think it's already in a state where if we had some implementation of this, which is like a wrapper around the existing AstroPi or the existing Pint, I think there was like a very small attempt to have like a very minimal wrapper around Pint, but it didn't really do any of the like static typing, like inheritance or anything like that. So it was failing all the typing. So I think if anybody wants to start working on this, then you'd have to at least get some help from the people who know how all the typing works, if you don't already know that yourself. But yeah, what I would like to do once somebody has worked on that is like start consuming that API in quantity array instead of the Pint API. So we just replace all of these Pint imports with what we have in the what I've just been showing you. And yeah, then we can start throwing it at the SciPy test suite and see what fails. And it should be sort of very similar things to where marray might fail, which is if we're like extracting values out of arrays and then like throwing away those arrays and then making new arrays, that pattern is generally not going to work. What we want is like a flow all the way through the function where the units can propagate and the masks can propagate and so on. Otherwise, if we're like throwing away the inputs and constructing new things, we would have to add special casing for like extracting the masks and extracting the units and then putting them back on. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that we probably don't want to start adding all over SciPy. But yeah, it will be most useful to start really thinking about how much of this is going to work out of the box once we actually have an implementation that we can start testing. Yeah.
I think I missed it, but is the quantity an array API array in this case?
Yes, that's what quantity array is doing. So it consumes an array API standard array. Okay. So for most things, so yeah, we make this new array quantity class, which is like this is using all of Pint's typing, so it's very confusing right now, but it's basically a intersection type of the array API standard and then this quantity API.
So then the converter function has to return something that is written in the array API. Like the unit handler has to be able to provide a conversion function from a type to a type that is written in array API compatible way. It takes
Say more.
I haven't touched tensor or NumPy really. And I want to convert it from meters to kilometers. I need to be able to get that this is just an np.multiply or like an xp.multiply again with 100 on the value array.
Yeah.
Of 1000. So you need to be able to get this function that is written in array API terms. And what I didn't quite get is if you have a quantity scalar also on the original namespace, how you get this conversion function, because then I feel you need this conversion function that Martin mentioned. And you might still want the convenience function for the quantity scalar, but you also need the function for the array scaling.
But that's because, if I understand correctly, what we were looking at earlier was the non-array stuff. We were just looking at the...
Right, but the non-array stuff has to provide a way to implement the array stuff.
No, that's what the...
This metrological namespace has to provide, has to teach the array how to convert, no?
No, that's what the quantity array is.
But how does a quantity array know how to convert from meters to kilometers?
Because it holds both the quantity information and the array.
Yeah, so in the pint implementation of like, you had, so like for these binary operators, I just did the ones that like don't need any special handling of units yet, so it's very much like work in progress. But it's like, for the magnitude, this is an array, and then we're just like calling the super method here, which is just calling into the XP namespace there. And then the rest of what's going on in the function is like calculating the unit behavior. Right now, this is just like it just performing the conversion and like assuming that there's no extra.
So what is this as units?
So this is what Pint has for converting one quantity. So it kind of does two things in one. Converts a quantity to a new unit, and that performs unit conversion, and then gives you just the magnitude out, which is what Pint calls the value, what we're calling the value now. So I think the discussion so far has been that we would, rather than doing 2-in-1 there, we would keep that as something that like Pint can add on top if they want, but we would just say, if you want to do conversion, this would be like as quantity other, and then units, as quantity other units, bracket parentheses, and then dot value. So you're performing the conversion, getting a new quantity out, and then querying for the value there.
But you can't do that. So you have an array, so you want to be able to do that with array calls. Maybe. I mean, how do you? So I have an array of NumPy array that stands for the unit wrapped into a quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And now I need to. I can query quantity array, right? Quantity array, and I want to say a transform, let's say some logarithmic unit. So I need a way to know that I have to call xp.log on my original value array, and I'm not sure where this xp.log information comes from. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, so we need to basically add a mapping in here. Say like, oh, okay, what is the behavior for mul? It's that we need to take like self.units and other.units and like multiply them together, and then we map that to an array API function.
But you have on the quantity array there has to be something like an S unit function, right? Method. Like an S or S quantity to cast the array from meters to kilometers.
Yes. Yeah, well, so like the quantity array is an intersection of an array and the quantity protocol here. Oh, so you're thinking.
So how do I? So at that point, I think you need this cast function that Martin was talking about. That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah, but you just need the metrology namespace. So
yeah.
So quantity array. You then, if we're doing like the marray method of like getting out a new namespace, it basically has two inputs. You give it xp, which is your array namespace, and you give it like mn, which is your metrology namespace. And then now that it has both of those things, it can, okay, we need a mapping of like, for this mul function, I need xp.mul, and then I also need this mn.asUnit to perform the unit conversion, and yeah, strings those together. And yeah, I mean, I would like to see I could just adapt quantity array to this new API without having an implementation and check that it all kind of makes sense. That would be useful, but I think it would be most useful to kind of get an implementation first, because maybe we hit some blockers and we realize that something we've specified is like impossible to implement. I mean, I don't think so, but maybe. And I think it makes sense to do it that way around first, and then try and consume it here and actually use it.
Oh, so right now, so the metrology namespace, I suppose, needs, if you have a function, to take the XP namespace and return functions probably, or return, or take the array, I suppose, either way.
Yeah, so
and work with the array.
So the metrology namespace is completely generic on the value type. So the value can just be anything, and it knows nothing about arrays. And then it's only in this quantity array world where we can start doing useful things, because we're restricting the value to say, okay, this must be an array API standard array, right? I mean, I don't.
How do I know how to take log 10 of the value if I don't know that it's an array API standard?
But that's what the,
Well, you don't. So
that's what the quantity array is doing, right?
yeah. So
I think if I understand, I think you're expecting the array API knowledge to happen in the metrology code,
Yes.
but the metrology code doesn't need to do that because it's only carrying about units.
yeah. So that's like
Array standard stuff is only dealt with by the quantity array code, and the quantity array code deals with the array API standard, and it deals with the metrology standard, and then it puts the two together. So the fact that it knows what to do with the log is in the other code, it's not in the metrology.
I suppose I just don't see how the metrology namespace knows that the conversion is done with the log. And how do I map that to the xp.log? That is the spec that I just don't see right now. But,
okay. So
it's, yeah.
I think I know what you're getting at, but you're saying like, okay, forget quantity array for now. We're just talking about this like metrology namespace dot as unit.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have like some unit here, and then some like log unit here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this needs to, okay, as quantity. However we're doing conversion, we have like a queue and we have like a log unit here, and this needs to know on.
If it gets a quantity scalar, it can just do the calculation. I suppose that's fine. But if it gets a quantity array, then you need to call the XP log on it. So how does the...
But this cannot get, because this is the metrology.
This is the metrology unit, so it knows nothing about the array.
Yeah, this would be, at this point, it would be a quantity array dot as quantity.
Yeah, so so this actually can't do it. It will error for
this
most things. So the bare metrology namespace API, it can't do much. It will like error for everything because it's completely generic on the value type, right? But then it's more interesting when we start you start implementing for known values, and then for known like dimensions on the units. Then you can start implementing these conversions, right?
So if you have a class now, or maybe we should just continue with other things for now. And then
Okay, right, we'll come back to it. Does anybody have anything else? No, I mean, I guess let's keep going.
So you have the class, the quantity array class,
Yeah,
and you call it as quantity log.
yeah,
Then it needs to vary the namespace how to convert to this log unit.
yeah,
And the metrology namespace knows nothing about the quantity array. So, but we have to pass in the value array, which into it, and it has to work with it, or we have to pass in the XP namespace, and it tells me, okay, the result is this function which contains xp.log as the actual implementation for the conversion of the values. Which and that's why I think the only reason why I mentioned it because I think to me it makes sense to go what Martin suggested, to say you basically pass in, give me the conversion in terms of XP. XP is the namespace, and then the metrology namespace will return, okay, that is XP.log is the conversion. But you can also say the metrology namespace should just know about Array API and do the conversion in Array API as a new method.
So like
So it would be
this converter here of from unit to unit, you're saying this would also need to depend on XP, otherwise we don't know how to
Otherwise
convert.
you don't know how to convert arrays.
I see what you mean. Because if you like, yeah, you know that you know how.
I know how to
Like
convert
Pines knows how
scalars.
to convert like 1 joule to electron volt, but that isn't that trivial to know how to apply that to an array.
They're like very complicated conversions, right? Yeah.
I mean, we know that you apply it to every element, but it's not that.
Yes.
It's not that obvious. Yeah, I can imagine.
So then you need a converter XP or you need a convert array on the metrology namespace. I think, which is fine. It's not like a big deal. It's convert.
But we don't. Why do we need it on the metrology namespace?
Because
We just need it on the quantity array namespace, right?
you need a little bit, but the quantity array does not know how to do the conversion at all.
Actually, no,
it's
it's not.
nothing.
It's not a problem because you only work with magnitudes, and you only work with units separately. You don't work on the elements of the array.
But if you convert into a log,
So you treat it as if it was like we know that a log, like NP log, XP log, works on scalars and on arrays.
but but if I add a log here, well, okay, it shouldn't do that. But in some cases, or maybe you don't allow that. So if I add meters and kilometers, the result I have to convert one of them before I can add them.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you just say you don't allow that, but even then you need to do it. You need an explicit actually convert the values, because otherwise you can't add meters and kilometers. Even the user can't ever achieve that. So you need a way to. You can't just do that. And this is represented as but stored as different. That's not.
Yeah. Okay. I think I understand. So the question we're kind of getting is, how can this be implemented without passing XP in? Like if we're completely generic over the values, then over the value type, then this would just always error. And it's only when we start knowing how to define this converter. Because this proposed API is completely generic over the value because it's just taking a from unit and a to unit, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then that's not going to work if this value is an array. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what and unless you want to describe all possible conversions, I think it's probably easiest to just pass in an XP and say the metrology namespace needs to provide this. It doesn't seem like a big deal.
Yeah, but then it's not generic over the value type anymore, right?
Well, I mean, it's generic for any array.
For any array, which is absolutely fine to include in quantity array, but I think it's maybe not suitable for.
But then how do you describe conversion?
Well, that's what we can go away and ask. Okay, progress, we have one thing, yeah?
So in this case, conv would be a function.
Yeah.
Let's say if we do from kilometers to meters, it would be a function that takes in a quantity, a value.
Yeah, so this value here could be an array, or it could be a data frame or something, whatever else you're attaching units to.
And then we know from kilometers to meters, the conversion is times 1,000. So it would return value times 1,000.
Yes, so if you can implement it just with like Python operators, then that's fine. if you can't, then you need to start calling like NumPy functions, or it's going to be super slow, or impossible to define. Then yeah, no.
No, or can you?
Yeah. Okay, well, we have that question. I will write something up for that. How long do we have left? Like 2 minutes. I mean, we can overrun if people want to keep talking, but otherwise, I guess we can kind of wrap up. But does anybody else have any other thoughts? No? Okay. Yep.
Complete change of topic.
Sure.
We've been discussing all of the low-level kind of details about how to design this. From a high-level point of view, who is the target audience for this?
So,
are we expecting researchers writing their scripts to target this?
No.
API?
So,
is that for internal use by SciPy?
Yeah, it's similar to the array API. This would be internal use for. So this metrology API stuff is strictly facing the unit libraries themselves, just so they can agree on some common API. And then this quantity array, ideally it's kind of like a standalone thing, like marray, that just happens to work with SciPy and scikit-learn because of how it's defined. The end user story is just, an end user is just using one array type, they're just using one unit type, the library that they're used to using, and it just becomes more interoperable with other tools because of this work. So yeah, in terms of quantity array, I guess the user would then need to use quantity array. Yeah, so a user would do like from quantity array, import, okay, let's not do it the fancy marray way. From quantity array, import like get namespace, and then they would say get namespace, PyTorch, astropy.units, if those are the two libraries that they're used to working with. Then this new namespace that they have, they would use it they would then pass that into SciPy and pass that into astropy and wherever else they're using it. And ideally, if these things support the array API standard, then they would also support this new mishmash namespace that we've crafted up. So yeah, that's the story. Quantity array does become user-facing.
What do you mean by they would pass it to SciPy?
So sorry, you pass the objects.
So you would convert your arrays to this.
Yeah. So
this like namespace.
Yeah. So when you used to do like NumPy array times astropy.units.meter or whatever, you construct that object and then you pass it into astropy and it does its things. Now it's like you do get your namespace where you're passing in the XP and the MN, then you're constructing something with like as quantity. You pass in your array to the value, you pass in your unit that you want, and then that's what goes around. And that's what these then consuming libraries consume.
It's not possible to do the same thing when you because anyways you need to get buy-in from libraries like Pint and you have buy-in from the array API, right? Can't you just do the multiplication and what you get out already is compliant to these specifications? Like if you do NumPy array times the Pint quantity or the astropy.
I guess
what does NumPy return in that case?
NumPy doesn't do it. So
it's not implemented, so
Pint does it. Pint does return the NumPy array.
It's
an array.
Yeah, because anyways the unit library has to have an object that is.
And astropy does the same thing, right? Astropy creates a NumPy array creates a quantity array by multiplying a NumPy array with the units.
Yeah. So what you're saying will be possible if we have this brand new astropy units 2.0 that supports this. If you do one of their units times by an array API standard array, it would look at that input, it would call array namespace if it thinks it's an array. So astropy itself handles getting the XP, and then
So what I would expect as a user.
So the user experience.
Feed that to SciPy and it just works.
Yeah, and then SciPy can look at it, say, oh, this is an AstroPy quantity, and then build or get this.
Yeah, so you're actually right. In that sense, quantity array would then not need to be user-facing. It would be like a utility that all of these different unit libraries call into whenever they get array input.
So the ones that actually have to buy in are essentially the unit libraries and the consumers like SciPy.
So again, it depends how the consumers are implemented. If you have this kind of pure path where all you're operating on, the input, is like array API standard functions or like standard Python arithmetic and things like this, then as long as that's well defined with the units we have, that should all be fine.
So you mean quantity array can hide completely the unit behind the array API?
So like in SciPy, if we're taking in an array and we're like extracting out the data and passing it to some C, and then the C is doing some computation, and then we're getting it back, then like marray, quantity array won't work out of the box because we lose that info. But we could then, if the SciPy maintainers are happy with it, like add in extra things to be like, if this is a masked array, let's extract the mask and then like apply it back at the end. But you'd have to be careful. It would have to be like, is it well defined based on what the computation is going over here that has to leave Python? But like if it's units, it may well be the same thing. It's like, yeah, the units aren't changing here. There's just some manipulation that happens that doesn't change the units, but then we can like reattach it. Yeah.
I think AstroPy is getting away with it also for NumPy functions and stuff. Right? It's a subclass of NumPy, so you can probably run quite a bit of SciPy functions on AstroPy quantities right now.
Yeah. So yeah, that should work. So yeah, that's okay. Good that we worked that out. That quantity array wouldn't necessarily have to be user-facing. Yeah. Okay, so I will make sure to write up that issue, reply on here, and see what Martin thinks about that. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
You got Martin on your team. You got covered.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. No. Okay. Let's finish that then. Thank you all for coming.
No, I just think with this thought that you actually just magically see what the user gave you and then create a very difficult.
Yeah, and I mean that's what they're doing already for NumPy, but then it's like they need something like this to generalize it out. Yeah.
The only tricky thing is if you have a Python scalar tiny thing, so it has a NumPy. And I suppose if you then try to mix it with power array, it will
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
AstroPy is in the quantity scalar, right? It's totally fair. But
Everything is a NumPy array in AstroPy, is that right? In AstroPy units, everything just becomes a NumPy?
Yeah, it does not have a scalar.
Okay, whereas that's not true for Python.
Python has scalar first, yeah.
Yeah,
that is true.
Okay.
But AstroPy is never had scalar.
Okay.
Which is like, this is nice for the API, but also like the